Pyjamas by Robert Perry and Mike Tucker. What is a house, and what is home? Where with freedom thou hast room, and mayst to all tyrants say, this you cannot take away. Joseph Beaumont.
This is crud, Professor. Let's go.
Ace kicked at the ground, sending a shower of grit into the air.
Oh, give it a chance, Ace.
The doctor sounded irritable. Ace knew when he was on the defensive, covering up for a bad decision.
But it's a rock.
It was. A rock. A lousy asteroid in the middle of nowhere. Stone and dust. Breathable atmosphere, but nothing there to breathe it. Nothing except them, the doctor, Benny, Ace. Even Benny looked vaguely disappointed. She had grown excited when the doctor had revealed exactly where this asteroid was, a little explored quarter of the galaxy that had, on occasions, yielded some spectacular archaeological results. She trudged up the grey slope on which the TARDIS had materialized. Ace was right. Ace was always complaining, but this time she was right. It was a depressing hole. The sky was like lead, like an Earth sky before heavy rain. Except that here there was no prospect of rain. The sky was as dead as the ground. She stopped. Over the ridge, the view was just the grey. Same, except... surely not. Doctor? Benny broke into a run, down the other side of the slope, kicking up dust as she went. She stopped, breathless, outside the structure, her hands on her knees, her head next to the wall. It was the real thing. Dark green stone, narrow, gently curving blocks piercing upwards from the ground like the blades of samurai swords. A Martian dwelling house.
Remarkable!
Drawing up next to his companion, the doctor leaned forward on his umbrella.
What do you think it's doing here?
I don't know, Benny replied. There's no evidence of Martian settlement in this part of the galaxy. They never came near here.
I know. Odd, isn't it?
The building is genuine, Doctor. It's not a fake, and yet... the setting... Of course, it's all wrong. No Martian house would ever be plonked down in a dust bowl. The setting would be highly ordered, decorative.
Great! A wigwam!
Mooching up slowly, Ace kicked a stone at the wall of the building. No one was listening to her. Benny was trying to open the door. The doctor was suggesting she knock first. Ace was bored.
It's locked, said Benny. Nobody home. Well, I suggest we find somebody before we walk into a locked dwelling house. We wouldn't want to disturb a sleeping ice warrior.
The doctor turned on his heel in the dust and strode around the side of the building.
There,
said the doctor, pointing to something on the horizon. It was too far to make out any detail. He fished an old pair of opera glasses from the pocket of his baggy, off-white jacket and raised them to his eyes.
Curiouser and curiouser.
He passed the glasses to Benny. I don't recognize that, Doctor. Definitely not Martian.
Argolin,
the doctor stated, already walking towards it. Benny set off after him at a trot. Ace watched them go. Nobody had offered her the glasses. Taking her time, trying to register her contempt with every slow movement, she followed her companions. By the time she reached them, other buildings had appeared over the horizon. 3 of them, each as different from the other as this Argolin cloche, as the doctor had called it, was from the previous Martian thing. It reminded her of an awful trip they'd been on from school.
This is just like that place in Wales, where they have all the old buildings. Farmhouses, old churches, that sort of thing. Saying that... Of course! Ace, you're a genius! Don't you see, Benny? She's absolutely right. This is some kind of an exhibition. I believe the expression on 20th century Earth is... He paused, searching for the words. A theme park. Yes, a theme park.
Please keep off the grass.
Ace spun round in an instant, her hand instinctively reaching for her belt. She had no gun. "Please keep off the grass," the electronic voice word again, crackling with politeness and civility. Standing, or rather hovering, about 4 feet off the ground in front of the travellers was something vaguely resembling a rugby ball upright on its end. It was a bit bigger, a bit squatter, and made of metal, with vents and scanners, grills, and a bright red push-button arranged so that the first impression Ace got, and one that it would prove surprisingly hard to shake, was of a face. A cute, smiling face. It was a rugby ball with a face. The thing bobbed slightly in front of them. "Please keep off the grass." What grass? There was no grass, only dust and rock. The thing floated nearer. If it is possible to float purposefully, that's what it did. "I rather think it's trying to shepherd us," the doctor almost whispered. "Shall we see where it wants us to go?" He started to walk away from the floating, fussing robot, and the others followed. Their escort bobbed from side to side like a squat sheepdog. "Please keep to the designated path." It swung in a wide arc to the doctor's left. He turned. His companions turned. "It hasn't got much in the way of conversation, Professor." "Shall I press its button?" "Don't touch anything, Ace." Sometimes the doctor suspected she did this sort of thing deliberately. The only time she ever called him Professor nowadays was when she was trying to annoy him. "Let's just be patient for a change, shall we?" They must have walked for about 20 minutes. Still no path, still no grass, just the same polite instructions every time one of them transgressed this invisible highway code. They passed many more buildings, a Gond hut, a benefit office from Interminer, bizarre clashes of style and technology from 100 worlds that had never heard of one another. Ace was getting bored again. This was bloody Wales. And then she stopped dead in her tracks. "Doctor?" They had just rounded a steep outcrop of rock. There, nestling in a huge, shallow, natural bowl between hills, was a house she knew, a house they all knew, the doctor better than any of them. It was his house from Earth, England, Kent. "This is my house," he declared, his voice brusque with indignation. Digging the tip of his umbrella into the ground, he swung in the direction of the dark stone walls, the gables, the eaves he knew so well. "This exhibit is closed at present." The guide robot was hovering directly in front of him. The doctor stepped smartly to one side. The robot moved with him. "This exhibit is closed at present." He stepped the other way. The robot moved with him. "Please keep to the designated path." "Please keep to the designated path." A second electronic voice took up the refrain. Another robot was floating towards them. And a third. The three clustered around the travellers, ushering them earnestly forward. Now it was the doctor's turn to sulk. "Without so much as a by your leave," he muttered. They trudged on in silence. Benny was getting tired now. Her shoes were full of stones, her clothes dusty, and she had a headache. Beside her, the doctor walked, head down, staring furiously at the ground. On the other side of him, Ace stomped and scowled. "Why not relax with a hot drink or even a meal in our visitors' centre? Why not visit our gift shop?" In front of them was a long, low dome. It was pink. Coloured lights ascended columns at either side of a pair of glass doors and then descended again. Suddenly, the doors flew open. Ladies, and gentlemen, welcome to the Ararak's 14th Heritage Centre. Buildings shipped stone by stone, block by block, rivet by rivet, module by module from the four corners of the galaxy, the largest and newest heritage centre in 3 quadrants.
The figure bounced towards them. A large, beaming, avuncular face, almost human, just a little redder, nodded and danced on the top of a rotund body resplendent in dark stripe. 2 fat hands reached out for them. Heritage Centre. The doctor nodded slowly. Not a theme park, then. Oh, goodness me, no, sir. Allow me to introduce myself. Garpol's the name. I am the owner and manager. This is my assistant, Mr. Blint. A much smaller, much paler figure appeared from somewhere around the back of their large host, looking even sillier in dark pinstripe. Of course, we're not actually open yet, the figure announced breathlessly. We don't open for another month. There's still so much to do. The replicas of all the species, for one thing. Not open? Nonsense! Garpol threw his arms wide. You are our first customers, free, of course. The facilities are a little incomplete. He leaned forward conspiratorially. To be perfectly honest, it's lucky you didn't come last week. We only had the atmosphere fitted a few days ago. He shook his hands, dismissing the thought. No matter, no matter. I'm sure that none of this need mar your enjoyment of our fine exhibits. Come in, come in. He backed under the pink dome, all the time beckoning. Casting a weary glance from Ace to Benny, the doctor trudged up to the glass doors. The 2 women followed. Slipping between them, Blint scurried up to the doctor, a clipboard in one hand, a pen in the other. Can I ask you a few questions? How did you get to hear of the Ararak's 14th Heritage Centre? Was it A, through an advertisement on telecast, B, through one of our brochures, or C, by word of mouth? D, snapped the doctor, swinging the door closed in the little man's face. To one side of the entrance, a map of the galaxy showing the original location of the exhibits curved elegantly away into what was obviously the restaurant, whilst on the other side the foyer opened out into a wide area where telebooks, holocards, and sticks of sugar-free rock swivelled on metal display racks. Garpol turned to face them and pulled a slip of paper from his jacket. I should like to present you with our special family pass, which entitles you to visit all the exhibits and contains a voucher that may be exchanged for 1 free child's meal in our spacious cafeteria. Is she yours? A chubby hand pinched Ace's cheek. She tensed. This creep was about 5 seconds away from a broken arm. Charming child, we do love families here. There is just one thing I ask. When you are visiting the exhibits, please keep off the grass. It's only just been laid, you know. What grass? The creep had withdrawn his hands just in time. There's no grass out there. The anxious head of Blint suddenly appeared around the far side of his employer. There's been a slight problem with the grass, Mr. Garpol. Problem? The fat man's voice had suddenly acquired a deeper tone. The contractors have said they can't now fit it for at least a month. A month? The fat hand was now raised, clamped into a fist. But we open in a month. As if suddenly remembering himself, Garpol returned his hand to his ample belly. His face turned from a snarl into a dripping smile. A few teething troubles, you know. Nothing more. Now, don't tell me. Terran. We have a couple of Terran exhibits which might be of interest to you. Yes. The doctor was running out of patience. One of them interests me a very great deal. Terran dwelling, large, 19th century English. Ah, yes, Exhibit 19, I know it well. So do I, Mr. Garpol, so do I. You see, I happen to own it. Garpol let out a slow, polite laugh, as if at a joke he didn't quite understand. No, I can assure you I own it. I own everything on Ararax 14. I bought the whole asteroid, you see, freehold. Everything on it is therefore mine. And may I ask how that particular house came to be on this particular lump of rock? Oh dear. Let me explain, my dear fellow. Garpol was speaking slowly now. An air of distaste, or at least of disappointment, had begun to creep into his voice. This wasn't the sort of customer they wanted to attract at all. The man obviously had no appreciation of where he was. This is a heritage centre. We take buildings and monuments from all sorts of civilizations, not just Terran, and we bring them here for people to visit. There's nothing to worry about, I can assure you. I suppose seeing a house from your own world must have come as a bit of a shock to you, eh? First, I happen to be Gallifreyan. Ah, yes, Gallifrey. I've heard of that. Now let me guess. Ireland. Secondly, the doctor interrupted, you appear not to be listening to me. I happen to own a piece of property which I had assumed was sitting exactly where I had left it, namely Earth. The doctor jabbed the elegantly curving galactic map hard with his umbrella. I now find, to my surprise, that the said piece of property, which I own, has been moved without my consent to here, he jabbed at the map again, where it has been dropped in a dust bowl. I should like to know why. Garpol's eyes narrowed, then bulged, then narrowed again. His mouth flickered between half smile and hard slit. He was digesting what this Terran had to say, and attempting to assimilate it into his own plans. The possibilities were tantalizing. Was he in his right mind, this funny little creature? Did he really own the house? Right species? Then again, did it matter? He clearly thought the house was his own. How much better than overpriced, unconvincing replicants? Then, of course, you must go to your house, Garpol simpered. His fat hands grew red as he rubbed them together vigorously. You must live there. Consider Ararax your home. You will be very happy here, and lots of people will come and visit you. For a moment, Garpol had a faraway look in his eyes. A real Terran family. Beaming at Ace, he reached out and tousled her hair. That was it. The fat creep had gone too far. She grabbed, she pivoted. 400 pounds of bone and blubber crashed to the polished floor. Oh dear. Blint fluttered around his master like a fly at a whale carcass. A guide, please. Emergency code 3. With a dull hum, 2 floating robots bobbed around the corner. Don't just stand there, Blint, bellowed Garpol, trying to haul himself to his feet. Get your gun out, man! Shoot them! His hand shaking, Blint drew from his belt a hand blaster, which somehow contrived to look friendly, in the same manner that the robots did. Awkwardly, shaking, he shifted the aim of the weapon from one to another of the companions. Benny snorted. You should be careful with that. You might take your foot off. Stupid! Ace snarled at the terrified midget. Very, very stupid. She launched herself through the air. Blint fired wildly, shattering the elegant cosmic map into 1,000 viciously pointed shards. With a sudden whine, one of the smiling robots cannoned into the flying girl. There was a crackle of power, and Ace bounced off the wall and into a rack of authentic polyporcelain reproductions of Martian dwelling houses, Argoling cloches, draconian temples. The last thing she heard, before she blacked out, was Garpol's rasping order. Take them to Exhibit 19. Ace! Ace! She jackknifed upwards, fist clenched. Wood panelling swam into view. And books looming over her. This was the sprawling study in the doctor's house. She was stretched out on the leather chaise-longue, Benny staring down at her. What happened? Where's Metal Mickey? The robot had some kind of electric charge passing through its casing. You took quite a shock. Ace sprang to her feet. I'm fine. What are we going to do? Not a lot at the moment, Ace. The doctor slipped in through the door of the study. It's getting dark, and our host has surrounded the house with his little friends. So we're just going to sit here? She slumped back into the chaise-longue. Oh, no. The fruity tones of Garpol suddenly swam around the room. Ace was instantly on her feet again. Do forgive me for interrupting you, but it's dinner time. Garpol's voice boomed from concealed speakers. Somewhere, a tinny, out-of-tune gong was sounding. Dinner time? You're mad, aren't you? Young lady, regular meal times are very important. You want to grow up big and strong, don't you? Ace shook her head in amazement. There was no point trying to reason with him. If you would care to step into the kitchen, Blint has prepared something rather special to welcome you, though don't expect this sort of treatment every day. From tomorrow on, you're on your own. The idea of food didn't sound half bad to Benny. Anything was better than sitting around in here. She looked hopefully towards the doctor. He smiled. Come along, then. This might be rather nice. The house likes to keep a good larder. It never knows who might drop by. With a wink, he led them from the room of oak and books. That was the thing about this house. It was almost too perfect. Benny could see why Garpol had acquired it. Logs roared on the massive black kitchen range, and game and ham hung from the rafters. On the far wall a clock ticked hollowly. It was annoying Benny. The doctor wiped his mouth with his napkin and leaned back in his chair. Excellent. My compliments to the chef. Thank you, Doctor. Garpol's voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. More than the clock, more than the creak of the doctor's chair, the crackling of the fire, the almost too real old-worldness of the place, that voice set Benny's nerves on edge. I shall pass them on. I see you've cleaned up a bit in here too, said the doctor, his head back, talking into the middle distance. Why, yes, I do particularly like this room. So much cosier than the dining room, don't you think? What are we going to do, Doctor? Benny had had enough. The doctor had talked rubbish through the meal, mindless banter, as if they really were sitting down to a family supper in a Victorian house in Kent. Ace had sulked and gnawed savagely at a chicken wing. The doctor had chastised her for her table manners. Do? How about a nice cup of tea? Always nice to have tea to round off a meal. I mean, do to get out of here, to find out what this is all about. As for what's going on, the doctor's face was suddenly serious. I would have thought that was obvious. Our friend Mr. Garpol has been stealing properties from all over the galaxy and bringing them here. Why stealing? Asked Ace. More to be difficult than anything else. Maybe he bought them. The house has been transported here against its will. I can feel it. You talk about this place as if it was alive. Benny shuddered. She was an archaeologist. She was trained to deal with dead places. Is it haunted? Ace piped up. All houses are haunted in some way, Ace. All places. Things happen. People come and go. Places remember. Doctor, how are we going to get out of here? We're not, Benny. This is my house and I'm not moving. It's pointless anyway. Whilst our all-seeing, all-hearing host wants us to stay. Very sensible, Doctor. Garpol again. I can see you're not the simpleton I first took you for. How are we doing so far? The eating of the meal was excellent, Doctor, although I must say your daughter's table manners leave something to be desired. I feel sure it is not the custom on Earth for young ladies to eat with their feet on the table. Yes, you're right. Take your feet down, Ace. Ace swore and let her feet fall heavily to the floor. Don't you think it's a little past the young lady's bedtime, Doctor? Bedtime? That was the last straw. Now listen to me, fatso. Meet me outside, just you, without your floating friends, and I'll show you who's a young lady. We can still use replicants, you know. Garpol's voice was petulant. And you know what that means. Come on, Ace, Benny cut in. It doesn't usually take this much persuading to get you into bed. Up yours! Don't you dare speak to your mother like that. Garpol sounded horrified. If I'd spoken to my mother like that... Ace's jaw dropped. Her mother? It was Benny who found her voice first as the implications of Garpol's assumption hit her. If you think I'm old enough to... Ace, Benny, calm down. The doctor's voice was soothing, but the look on his face was urgent. They both knew that look. This was serious. "Doctor!" Garpol's voice was trembling with barely controlled fury. "Put the girl to bed!" The doctor let out a leadened breath.
"Ace, go to your room. First door on the left at the top of the stairs."
Flashing him an angry look, Ace got up and headed for the door.
"I'll come up and read you a story,"
he called after her. Ace had to bite her lip. She felt a complete prat. Lying there, blankets up to her chin, striped pyjamas, a teddy bear clutched in one hand. She had been on the verge of marching back down the stairs and demanding a different room. The walls were covered with cartoon ducks. The paintwork was baby pink. Why the hell did the doctor have a room in his house done out like a nursery anyway? And now here he was, sitting on the edge of the bed reading to her. The book was The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. She remembered it from school. The doctor had begun, in his lilting tones, to tell the story of a girl just like her, who went to live in a house just like this one. She wasn't happy there, until she noticed an ornament sitting on the mantelpiece. A magic ornament. The girl took it and used it to pass through a blue door into a magical kingdom. The doctor's storytelling voice was hypnotic, and it was a long while before Ace realized that this wasn't The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe at all. She was about to say something when the doctor snapped the book shut.
"That's enough for tonight, Ace. It's been a busy day. You must be tired. You must be mad if you think I'm going to sleep. You must be tired, Ace."
The bastard wouldn't dare. He wouldn't. Already she could feel her eyes closing. Benny slumped into the sofa's deep cushions and tried to relax. The doctor's behaviour was irritating her. No plan. Nothing. He had insisted upon going upstairs to read his daughter a bedtime story, assuring Garpol that it was an inviolable Earth tradition. Garpol replied that he would look it up. His voice had returned some minutes later, chortling and sniggering, telling the doctor to go ahead. It had made Benny feel quite queasy. In front of Benny, yet another real fire raged. The lounge. Baby grand piano, although the only thing she had ever heard the doctor play was the spoons. An elaborate painting on the wall, 18th century if it was genuine, in a frame so garishly baroque it had to be the real thing. The heavy ornamentation of the room dwarfed the television set in the corner. The TV was on. She hadn't switched it on. It had just been jabbering at her from the moment she had entered the room. News. One of those endless 20th century wars, tanks firing on peasants in the hills. "It's good to see you making yourself comfortable, my dear. Such a nice family home." Was there nowhere they were free of Garpol's presence? "Shall we see what's on the other channel?" Suddenly the tanks and peasants were gone. Suddenly there was a tall man with a prominent pointed chin and an unconvincing hairpiece, coaxing and cajoling 4 overweight, laughing members of the public who were each trying to make something out of dough. They were racing against the clock. They were mostly covered in dough. It never failed to amaze Benny what had passed for entertainment in the centuries before she was born. "Ah, here you are, Benny," said the doctor, poking his head around the door. "A very nice story, Doctor." Garpol's voice oozed with pride at his latest acquisitions. "Oh, we are going to have fun here. The public will love you."
"Look, can't you leave us to spend our family evening?"
Benny tried to infuse the words with the contempt she felt. "In peace."
"So, Mr. Garpol," said the doctor, smacking his hands together in anticipation, "what's the plan for this evening?"
"Oh, your charming wife and I were just watching a little 20th century television, Doctor." The picture in the corner of the room changed again. A snooker match. "I have thousands of hours of recordings, Doctor. I find it fascinating the way all human desires, all human needs, are satisfied through that little box." "Oh, yes," replied the doctor, sinking into the sofa.
"It's a marvellous machine. Do you have any blind date?"
They had watched Scylla, Jeremy, Professor X, Bill Grundy and the Sex Pistols, and the 1966 World Cup final. Benny felt her head starting to spin. The doctor seemed to be enjoying it all. She would have preferred to spend a bit more time studying each of the snippets of history that Garpole paraded before them. Not this late at night, though. At last, quite involuntarily, she yawned. The doctor jumped to his feet. "Come, Mr. Garpole, more TV." "I think your wife might have watched enough television for one night, Doctor. I think it might be time to proceed with the next part of our program." Benny could have sworn the embodied voice paused for dramatic effect. "Bed." The doctor shuffled into the room from the ensuite bathroom. Already in the huge four-poster bed, Benny had to stifle a laugh. Pale blue pyjamas, festooned with red question marks. "Your own nightwear is hardly edifying, you know," the doctor snipped. It was true. She had been appalled on lifting the pillow to see a pink negligee. By the side of the bed there were a pair of pink, fluffy mules. "Well," Benny said coyly, "are you coming to bed?" An unreadable look on his face. The Time Lord slipped under the covers. As Benny reached across and switched off the light, he whispered, "Be gentle with me." The Mickey Mouse alarm clock managed to announce that morning is the best part of the day twice before it was shuttered under a single blow from a child's cricket bat. Ace had never liked mornings. She hadn't liked them in Perivale, she hadn't liked them on Iceworld. Somehow, the mornings on board the TARDIS had always seemed like lions, even when she had been dragged from her bed to join the Doctor and Benny on yet another wild goose chase. Something to do with the ship's relative time, no doubt. She grimaced. Somehow, being here, being in a house again, being part of a family, albeit Garpole's idea of a family, was bringing old ghosts to the surface, and she didn't like it. She hauled herself from the bed, her feet curling on the cold wooden floor, and hurled the cricket bat into the toy chest where she had found it. Cat-like, she sniffed the air. From somewhere downstairs, breakfast smells were drifting. They could wait. For the moment, all she wanted was a long, hot bath to restore her humanity. She padded down the hallway and into the bathroom, remembering the last time she had been in the Doctor's house, that business with the boy in the barrel, an age ago. She turned the taps on and stripped off her pyjamas. She stood for a moment in front of the mirror looking at herself. The teenage girl from Perivale was long gone. In her place stood a battle-scarred woman, old before her time. For a second, Ace wondered what her life might have been like without the intervention of Fenric and the Doctor. A normal life, the life of a London teenager. Then her mother's face swam before her eyes, and the thought was gone. She slipped into the bath, luxuriating in the old-fashioned sensations. The sonic showers in the TARDIS were no match for this. As she relaxed, she remembered the Doctor's story from the previous night. The ornament on the mantelpiece. What was the cunning old bastard up to? Downstairs, Benny was not in good shape. She sipped her third coffee of the morning and desperately tried to shake the sleep from her eyes. It had not been a good night. The Doctor had been in bed barely 5 minutes, 5 minutes during which he had done nothing but twitch and fidget, before he had leapt to his feet again and paced endlessly around the room, muttering to himself in Gallifreyan. Benny's temper had eventually snapped, and she told him to stop pacing and come back to bed. The Doctor had duly complied, and had immediately fallen into a deep, coma-like sleep. For the rest of the night she had to put up with the Doctor's constant and loud snoring. There had been only one point when he had stopped. Just as Benny had been on the verge of nodding off, he had suddenly sat bolt upright and shouted, "But, Brigadier, the Autons are disguised as traffic cones!" Then he had fallen sound asleep again. Benny had spent the rest of the night awaiting another outburst. It hadn't come, but by the time she eventually got to sleep, it had been 3 a.m. 4 hours later, the doctor had leapt from the bed and vanished downstairs. Benny had tried to get back to sleep, but without success, and had eventually resigned herself to breakfast at what she considered to be the most ungodly hour imaginable. She had now been up for 4 hours. She looked up as Ace entered the dining room. The younger woman seemed fresh and invigorated.
"You look very perky," Ace grinned. "A night on my own. What do you expect?"
Benny snorted and returned to her coffee. Ace reached for the pot and poured herself a cup.
"So, do you have anything to tell me?"
Benny looked her in the eye. "No." Ace returned her gaze with wide-eyed innocence.
"Only asking.
Where is the doctor, anyway?" As if on cue, he appeared in the doorway of the kitchen, a frying pan in each hand, a Snoopy apron around his waist.
"Kippers or bacon?"
Ace turned.
"Both."
"Aha, a breakfast connoisseur." He smiled that unique smile of his, and vanished back into the kitchen, reappearing a few seconds later with a plate piled high. The butter from the kippers mingled with the yolks of the eggs. The toast vied for position with the fried bread. Everything that could be eaten for breakfast was on this plate. He set it down in front of Ace and, sitting himself down, began to smother a single piece of toast with an inordinate amount of marmalade. Benny groaned as Ace tucked into a breakfast that most people would consider inedible. Both of them seemed remarkably calm, considering their predicament, and Benny suddenly felt distant from her two companions. The experiences that they had been through before her arrival suddenly very prominent in her thoughts. Both women watched the doctor as he proceeded to get marmalade all over his fingers, waiting for him to begin outlining his plan of action. A plan that they both knew he must have. Ace opened her mouth to speak, but the doctor raised a finger to his lips, sucked the marmalade from it, then solemnly elevated it like a conductor's baton. On cue, Garpol's fruity tones boomed around the room. "Good morning, my lovelies. I'm so glad to see you all at breakfast. It's nice that families start the day together." The doctor waved cheerily at nothing in particular.
"Good morning, Mr. Garpol. What can we do for you?"
"I'm just letting you know your daily routine. You might as well get used to it now, before we start letting the public in."
"And what did you have in mind? Long rambling walks in the country, outings to the seaside, a daily trip around the asteroid by hot air balloon, perhaps?"
Garpol chortled theatrically. "Nothing so wide-ranging, Doctor. I've been doing my research into 20th century family life, you see. Ideally, I would have liked you to have had you washing your car all morning, but I'm afraid that Blint has been woefully inefficient in procuring a motor vehicle for me. He's not very good with anything mechanical, you know. Still, we've come up with a suitable alternative. You shall cut the grass. We've even managed to find an original 20th century lawnmower. A metatraxi that I know thought that it was a weapon and had it hanging on the wall in his clan hive." Ace stopped eating.
"How's the doctor going to cut the grass when there isn't any grass yet, Bogbrain?"
Irritation crept into Garpol's voice. "He can go through the motions, can't he? I've told you, the grass will be here at the end of the month." He sighed. "Oh, Doctor, I don't envy you having to bring up this impetuous child. Or you, Bernice. May I call you Bernice?" Benny smiled sweetly. "Certainly. Only my friends call me Benny. What did you have in mind for me today?" Garpol clapped his hands with glee. "Oh, my dear, all manner of things. Washing up, hoovering. I get quite giddy with the possibilities. You have no idea how well the videos are going to sell." Benny bristled. "If you think for 1 minute—" The doctor abandoned his toast and bustled to her side.
"Aha, Benny, 1 moment."
He looked up.
"And what about Ace?"
"She will join you in the garden, Doctor. You can keep an eye on her whilst she plays." The doctor straightened.
Good, that's got that sorted out. It looks a little chilly out there, Ace. I think you'd better get your jacket.
Ace made as if to reply, then caught the look in the doctor's eye. She grinned. "Okay, Dad." She pushed the debris of her breakfast to the centre of the table and bounded out of the room, heading for the lounge where she had left her combat jacket the previous evening. The doctor strolled over to the back door and opened it. He turned to Benny. "See you later, dear. Have something nice ready for lunch." The door shut, just as one of Benny's pink, furry mules bounced off the frame. Ace slipped into the lounge, eyes scanning for hidden cameras. She glanced over at the mantelpiece. There was the ornament that the doctor had mentioned in his bedtime story. A snowstorm. She frowned as she picked it up. Inside was a representation of the doctor's house. She shook it, watching the snow swirl and settle. How the hell was this going to help? On a wild impulse, she rubbed it with her sleeve. Nothing. No genie, no 3 wishes. No bloody good at all. He's really losing his marbles this time. She snatched her jacket off the sofa and headed for the front door. She was unsurprised to find several of Garpol's robots lurking at the end of the path. As she walked around the house, she could see an unbroken line of them, at 5-foot intervals, all around the grounds. Garpol certainly wasn't taking any chances. She found the doctor, with his shirt sleeves rolled up, pushing an antique lawnmower up and down the dusty surface of the asteroid, small stones flying up around his head, a grey cloud slowly settling in his path. "You really have no idea quite how incredibly stupid you look." The doctor looked hurt. "Don't be like that, Ace. Just go and play nicely." He fixed her with those twinkling grey eyes of his. "You did get your toys, didn't you?" "Of course, I'm a good girl." Her voice dropped, "though I don't see what bloody good it's going to do." The doctor tapped his nose, and Ace sighed. She wasn't going to get any more out of him for the moment. He actually seemed to be enjoying himself. "Where do you want me to go and play, then?" He waved his hand towards the end of the garden. "Why don't you get your bike out of the shed?" Ace looked. A reasonably sized shed stood in the shelter of the wall. She turned back to the doctor, but he was off again, halfway across the garden, pointlessly mowing the grit. She picked up a hefty chunk of rock and threw it at one of the robots, smiling with satisfaction at the metallic thunk that resulted. Some of her frustration vented, she crossed to the shed and tried the door. The lock was stiff with disuse, and the door creaked alarmingly. Ace stepped into the gloom, the smell of compost filling her nostrils. The shed was a mass of flower pots, tools, and boxes. She had to admire Garpol. When he said that he had moved everything, he meant everything. Suddenly something caught her eye. Above her, to her left, a blur of orange, horns and a taut body, eyes and teeth in a grinning mouth. She whirled, a garden fork in her hand in seconds, stabbing at her attacker. There was a soft pop and the hiss of escaping air. Ace mentally kicked herself. She hurled the fork and the swiftly deflating space hopper to the floor. She was too jumpy. Where the hell was this bike? She pushed a pile of boxes to one side. A low shape, covered with a tarpaulin, stood before her. She pulled at a corner of the sheeting. It slid to the floor like a stage curtain, revealing the most beautiful bike that Ace had ever seen. A huge smile spread across her face. "Wicked!" The doctor smiled as he heard a low rumble from the far end of the garden. The rumble became a throaty roar, and Ace, high on the back of a vintage Harley-Davidson, exploded from the shed in a spray of flower pots and timber. She swung the bike round and gave the doctor a triumphant wave, then gunned the engine, wheelied through the garden gate, and set off across the asteroid's surface. The astonished robot stood stock still for several seconds. Queries were sent, orders sent back. With an agitated metallic chittering, several of them set off in pursuit of Ace. whilst the others closed ranks, camera eyes all firmly centred on the doctor. Whistling happily to himself, the doctor retrieved his jacket from the wall where he had left it and strolled back to the house. Benny's day had got no better. Since the doctor and Ace had left, Garpol had proceeded to tell her how famous she was going to be. The videos, the books. He had even tried to entertain her with the idea of a road show. The Doctor, Benny and Ace, the wonders of the modern world, the 20th century Earth family. Her already frayed temper had eventually snapped and, using all the 20th century expletives that she could muster, she'd told Garpol what he could do with his roadshow. His voice had faded, shouting to Blint about censorship and video classification. With nothing better to do, she began to put away the disaster area that had been breakfast. It was then that she'd heard the commotion from outside. She was on the verge of going out, when the door opened and the doctor stepped into the kitchen, shaking the dust from his shoes. She looked at him quizzically. "Do I gather that you found a way to severely piss off our host?" The doctor smiled. "Ace is merely playing on her bike. A bike that just happens to make a noise like the royal beast of Peladon." Her professional curiosity suddenly took over. "Just out of interest, what is it?" "A Harley-Davidson. I bought it several generations ago. I always used to like my gadgets." Benny shook her head. "Boys will be boys. I gather that a plan is now underway, then?" Before the doctor could answer, the door crashed open and a barely restrained Garpol thundered in, with Blint lurking in the shadow of his bulk. "Doctor, will you please explain to me just what you think you are doing?" The doctor turned, his face a picture of abject apology. "Mr. Garpol, what can I say? It seems that nothing I do can temper the girl's capacity for mischief. You know what teenagers are like." Garpol was almost purple with rage. "No, I do not. But I'm beginning to learn." He held up the deflated remains of the space hopper. "Look what she's done. Have you any idea how difficult that will be to replace? Have you?" He slumped onto a chair, shaking his head in disbelief. Blint patted him on the shoulder. "Never mind, Mr. Garpol. I'll get on to our suppliers at once. I'm sure that I'll be able to find a replacement for you." He paused, then added, "At not too great a cost." Garpol looked up, his expression driving all flippancy from the doctor's face. "Hear this, Doctor. If that girl damages one more item in my collection, I shall not hesitate to have her filleted and fed to my Stigarax. Is that clear?" The doctor said nothing, just watched as Garpol pulled his bulk from the chair and turned to the door, ushering Blint out in front of him. "You are confined to the house until further notice." The door slammed. Benny turned to the doctor and let out all her pent-up breath in a rush. "Remind me never to spill red wine on his carpets. What do we do now?" "How about finding something nice for lunch?" Benny was incredulous. "Well, it is nearly midday. I'll lay the table." He trotted out of the room, leaving a speechless Benny staring at the sad, deflated face of a punctured space hopper. Ace's hair streamed out behind her. She could have whooped with delight. After all the angst that they had been through recently, culminating in that business with the monk, this was something different. This was what she had joined the doctor for in the first place. This was fun. She glanced in the mirror. Behind her, barely visible in the dust of her wake, the pursuing robots were specks. She would be at the TARDIS long before they were even close. Above her, stars were beginning to show through the clouds with an intensity that would never have been possible on Earth, certainly not in the middle of the day, and the absurdity of the situation struck her. Laughing out loud, she pulled back hard on the throttle and the bike surged forward. Benny watched as the doctor bustled around the kitchen. He looked utterly at home. Understandable, really. It was his house. She wondered what the doctor's home, his real home, back on Gallifrey, must have been like. He never talked much about his past or about his family. He occasionally made a reference to a granddaughter, but the implications of that always made Benny feel uncomfortable. He whirled round, a basin full of potatoes in his hand, catching Benny's eye. She looked away hurriedly, scared that he might ask her what she was thinking. Or, worse still, that he already knew what she was thinking. "Are you going to help with lunch or not?" he asked. She snatched the bowl from him. "Since Ace left, all you've done is lay the table and put a roast in the oven. Is that all we're going to do? Eat?" "No. I thought that we'd get a nice bottle of wine as well. Hurry up and peel those potatoes, and you can come down to the cellar and help me choose one." He turned away. Benny was about to hurl one of the potatoes at the back of his head. Then the thought of what the doctor's wine cellar might be like filled her imagination. Lunch was beginning to sound like a good proposition after all. Ace pulled the bike to a sudden stop, the back wheel skidding round, sending clouds of dust into the star-filled sky. Shit! The TARDIS was gone. The only indication that it had ever been there at all was a perfectly square patch of flattened dust. Ace's heart sank. Whatever the doctor's plan was, it had been going well up until now. She glanced round. The robots were nearly on her. If she was going to escape, she had to go now. She stopped. Go where? That moment's hesitation was enough. Suddenly there were robots all around her, hemming her in. She braced herself as the robot nudged against her. "Please keep off the grass." No shock. No indication that it was going to harm her at all. "Please keep to the designated path." The robot shepherded her towards a vague track in the dust. The circle of robots parted as she wheeled the bike onto it. As soon as she was on the rough pathway, the robots began to disperse. Ace smiled. That stupid Git Garpol hadn't changed their program. They were still operating under their old orders, keeping people off the grass and on the designated paths. And if they were still programmed to help visitors... "Oi, Tinhead!" The nearest robot spun and drifted slowly back to her. "Where would a girl go to see a police box around here? Please consult a guidebook for a listing of all exhibits." "I haven't got a guidebook, you metallic moron." All curator robots are stocked with guidebooks. If your particular robot is out of stock, please contact the ticket office. Ace studied the squat metallic shape in front of her. All curator robots are stocked with guidebooks, are they? She peered at it more closely. This one had a name. A badge with, "Hi, I'm Baz, how can I help?" hung next to the red button. The button! She pressed it. With a satisfying whiff of machinery, a glossy laminated sheet slid out of a slot in the robot's casing and into Ace's hand. It was a map of all the exhibits in Garpol's exhibition. Ace scanned it for any indication as to where he might have put a police box. She smiled. The doctor's plan might work yet. "Okay, Baz, take me to Trafalgar Square." Benny was in seventh heaven. After she had peeled what seemed like an endless supply of potatoes, the doctor had led her through the house to a door under the stairs. Unlocking it with the great key from his pocket, he had led her down into the Stygian gloom. There had been a moment of panic when she had suddenly lost her grip on the doctor's hand. But seconds later, there had been the click of a light switch, and Benny's archaeological taste buds had gone into spasm. The doctor's wine cellar was huge. Not only huge, but full. The first bottle that she had lifted out had dated back as far as the Crusades. Every rack that she had examined had been simply packed with drinkable history. Earth had come off best of all, with wines from every conceivable century represented in the collection. But in the few minutes that she had been here, she had also discovered an entire rack devoted to the wines of Ribos, another to the champagnes of Manusa, and a shelf stacked high with every single brand of Ogron ale. She picked up a bottle and examined it more closely. "For a man who doesn't drink much, you've got bloody good taste." The doctor smiled. "I entertain a lot. Come on." He gestured to a barrel-lined corridor. Let's see how Ace is doing. Before Benny could question him, he had vanished into the gloom. Benny followed, clinging onto the bottle as if it was a child, and promising herself that when all this was over, she would spend some time down here. About a year. What? Behind his huge imitation mahogany desk, Garpol's 400-pound frame was shaking with rage. And those stupid machines are showing her the way? Blint was shuffling through the sheaf of papers attached to his clipboard. It was what he always did when he was nervous, which was most of the time. It's what they're programmed to do, Mr. Garpol. You must stop them, Bint. It's not that easy, Mr. Garpol. There are procedures. We can't just reprogram the guide robots. We have to call an accredited service engineer. Otherwise we lose our warranty. I've had enough of this, Blint. Garpol's hand slammed down on the authentically grained desktop. We shall use the Group 5 security robots. Pale as he already was, Blint seemed to turn several shades paler. But they're not tested yet, Mr. Garpol. They're not even unpacked. Then this will be the perfect opportunity to test them. Ace's admiration for Garpol went up by several million points. There, in front of her, sitting incongruously in the middle of a crater, was Nelson's column. Not just the column, but the lions, the fountains, and, to one side, a police box. She patted her attendant robot on the head. Thanks, Baz. This is where I want to be. The robot chirruped happily. Glad to be of service. Please keep to the designated paths. With that, it floated off. Ace revved the engine and set off towards the waiting TARDIS. As she approached, she eyed a small, incongruous bit of technology that she had noticed affixed to the handlebars. A single switch marked Doors. She pressed it. In front of her, the doors of the TARDIS swung open and, with a squeal of tyres, Ace steered the Harley straight through the void and into the console room. She dismounted, parking the bike next to the hat stand. She liked the look of the bike in the TARDIS. She would have to talk to the doctor about keeping it. Now then, she fumbled in her pocket and removed the snowstorm, then circled the console, scanning the lively surface. There. An indentation into which the base of the snowstorm would fit perfectly. An indentation which hadn't been there before. Ace scowled. Typical. The TARDIS was as bad as the Doctor. She reached out and placed the ornament into the space. It was immediately snatched from her grasp, locking tight onto the surface of the console. The room began to grow dim, and the familiar hum of the instruments dropped in pitch alarmingly. Oh, shit! Ace scrambled desperately at the snowstorm, trying to retrieve it from the panel, but the console seemed to draw it into itself. Her fingers slipped uselessly on the glass dome. The snow began to swirl furiously, an inner light illuminating the ornament. The room itself continued to get darker, until the only source of light came from the dancing, flickering snowstorm. Ace tucked herself into a corner and waited. Benny and the Doctor had been walking for a long time. Much longer, in fact, than should have been possible in the cellar. Barrels lined the walls. Benny had given up trying to memorize the contents. She tapped the Doctor on the shoulder. Is it my imagination, or is this house not quite as it seems? The Doctor smiled. You should know by now that nothing is ever quite as it seems. So, am I right in assuming that this house is in fact another TARDIS? The Doctor stopped dead. Good grief, no. I couldn't possibly own more than one. They get terribly jealous, you know. Let's just say that the house may have picked up a few tricks over the years. Come on, I think we're nearly there. He set off down another aisle. Benny looked around her. The barrels had slowly petered out, to be replaced by a circular motif that was very familiar. Very familiar indeed. It's back to Plan A, Garpol had said. Replicants, Mr. Blint. Dispatch the Group 5 security robots to eliminate the Terrans. Then he had had a thought. No. On second thought, I'll do it myself. I want to see this. You may accompany me." Now Garpol was sincerely wishing that he was somewhere else. This was the first time that he had set eyes on the Group 5 security robots. They had arrived only a day or two before, and had still been in their carrying crates. He had been impressed as they had glided out of their packaged darkness. They had looked as if they meant business. No hint of a helpful smiling face in the arrangement of their various parts, no shiny red button or guidebook dispensing slot, and definitely no badge saying, "Hi, I'm Baz." They were squatter and heavier than the guide robots, and each had what was obviously a high-caliber gun fitted to the front. Even the low droning sound that they made as they flew seemed designed to impress and intimidate. He had rubbed his hands with malicious glee as he had pictured the robots closing in on those wretched humans. The only trouble was, they didn't work. They kept bumping into each other, firing high-velocity shells at random over the horizon. They had already blown apart the pavilion of the summer winds from Tara. By the time they reached Exhibit 19, the doctor's house, Garpol was resigned to the inevitable. He had hoped to preserve the exhibit, fine example of the period as it was, and merely watch its occupants die slowly. This was clearly not an option now. Very well, let the robots have their head. The house must go along with its owner. It was directly in front of them. Garpol had changed his customary pinstripe for something of a more military cut. A dull khaki, brass buttons, what looked like gold scrubbing brushes on the shoulders, and length upon length of lanyard trailing beneath his fat arms. Blint was buried in something equally gaudy. Garpol threw his hand forward in a vaguely military motion, and the convoy, the general, his lieutenant, and a cohort of floating, droning metal, proceeded downhill towards their target. They got about 10 yards. Suddenly it was chaos. A savage wind was howling around them, cold and vicious. It snatched off Garpol's hat. It almost blew Blint off his feet. A savage wind and, carried on it, a thick blanket of swirling, driving snow. Snow? Something never before seen in the Ararak system. The wind sent the security robots cannoning into one another like skittles. The snow blinded them, clogged up their guidance systems, causing them to spin like tops. One fired a projectile. It hit another. The resulting explosion destroyed 2 more. Garpol was barking out orders, his voice lost in the gale. Blint was chasing the flying sheaves of paper that the wind had snatched from his clipboard and sent dancing across the asteroid's grey surface. The robots waltzed in chaos. Lost in the shadows of the dim TARDIS control room, the door that led into the guts of the ship silently opened. Ace leapt to her feet, cursing herself for allowing her mind to wander. "It's all right, Ace. It's only us." The Doctor and Benny emerged from the twilit corridor. Benny had a faraway look in her eyes. Cradled in her arms was a dusty, dark red wine bottle. "Very well done, Ace." The Doctor clapped her hand between his and shook it heartily. "What exactly did I do?" "Created a dimensionally transcendental corridor between the service levels of the TARDIS and the wine cellar in the house. Simple, really." He peered at the raging snowstorm. "It does tend to disturb the atmosphere a bit, though." He reached across the hexagonal console and pressed hard on the glass dome. It sprang up and out from amongst the controls. "There we are," he said. "Pop-o-matic." The hum of the control room rose again to its normal pitch. The room was once more brightly lit. He pocketed the little ornament. "That should stop anyone following us. Now." He flicked through a familiar sequence of switches. The time rotor at the centre of the console began to rise and fall. The storm ended just as quickly and inexplicably as it had begun. The wind, the snow, all seemed to vanish. Garpol looked around him. Blint was still scrabbling around for his errant papers. Only 3 robots remained. The others had either crashed into each other or blown themselves up. No matter. 3 would be enough. "Forward!" the fat commander shouted. He began the fatal march on the house, with the 3 robots moving in an erratic line behind him. Blint, buried in paper, brought up the rear, forlornly murmuring, "My schedule." Those humans would rue the... Garpol stopped. That sound. It resembled his own digestive system after a particularly heavy meal. For a moment, his hands clutched at his gut, until he realized that the noise was actually coming from the house. The air in front of them seemed to shimmer. There was a hint of a flashing white light. The sound ended with a sudden, dull clunk. The house was gone. In its place stood a rectangular blue box. Not bad, if I do say so myself. Quite a tricky landing. The Doctor tapped at a button, and the TARDIS view screen glowed into life. Red going on purple, the image that filled the screen was that of the globular cheeks and popping eyes of their former host. He looked about to explode. A second tap, and the screen went dead. We don't really want to look at that before we eat. The Doctor's hands were a blur on the console. The time rotor started moving again. Right, home. Doctor? Benny was hovering at his shoulder. Ace, uninterested, was squatting in front of the bike, her hands already covered in oil. I've materialized around the house, Benny. Now we're going to put it back where it belongs. Have you never heard the expression, wherever I lay my house, that's my home? Benny hadn't. No, how about home is where the house is? Doctor, what about all those other buildings? What about that pair of crooks? Ah, yes. Remind me to send a message to the Braxital Heritage Trust. I'm on the Board of Governors, you know. Irving can sort this mess out. What our friend Mr. Garpol is doing is quite illegal. The Trust will prosecute him and return all the buildings to their proper places. They're very hot on this sort of thing. He turned to the crouched figure of Ace. Ace, don't make a mess in here. And wash your hands before lunch, will you? Lunch? Benny was surprised. Mealtimes in the TARDIS were usually sporadic affairs. I think it should be ready by now, don't you? Come along, Ace. The Doctor disappeared back through the door into the ship's interior. Benny followed, smiling to herself, her fingers tapping lightly on the wine bottle she still carried. Excellent. She would have a chance to sample this superb vintage in a proper setting. Grumbling and rubbing her filthy hands on her trousers, Ace followed. It always amazed his companions how the Doctor knew his way around the ship. To Ace and Benny, the corridors seemed endless and virtually identical. This was a relatively short journey. The Doctor stopped at a small door set unobtrusively on a corner. Probably a cupboard, Ace thought, a wardrobe or something. The door swung open at the Doctor's gentle push. The light coming through it was wrong somehow. Too bright, too real? It was daylight, a gentle breeze, the sound of faraway birds. An English country garden. I was right, said Ace, more or less to herself. It was a wardrobe. Magic! In front of them sat the house. Around it, immaculately laid out, were lawns, flower beds, and conifers cut into tall, elegant cones. Their feet crunched on washed gravel as they walked towards the front door. The Doctor stopped, suddenly alert. He sniffed at something on the air. A look of barely controlled panic crossed his face. No, he muttered. Oh, no. His feet began to beat on the gravel as he ran forward, clutching his battered hat to his head. The roast! He bellowed as he flung himself through the door. Ace looked at Benny. Benny looked at Ace. A smile flickered between them. Miss Summerfield, said Ace, extending her arm to her friend. Shall we go in to dinner?